Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Micah, welcome to my hobby channel, Floating in Dreams, where I like to talk about all things fashion and makeup. And today I have another makeup related video for you. We're going to be talking about my favorite topic, eyeshadow palettes, and they're all cool toned. Yay! Yes, I have been trying some more cool tone, neutral leaning palettes again, and I like to lump these together and make one video about them. So I have 8 palettes in today's video for you. Well, it's more like 7.5, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And I have been doing videos like this at least once a year for a few years now. So I'll make sure to link the other ones that I've done so far in the description box down below. In case you're wondering, Micah, how do you feel about that cool tone palette? Because maybe I've already talked about it in previous videos, who knows? However, I do not pretend that I've tried every single cool tone palette out there, even though I think I'm getting close. So yeah, today we are just going to have a grand old chat about all things cool tone neutral eyeshadow palettes. So let's just get going. Before we get to the palettes, I do have to apologize a little bit for if my makeup and my hair is looking a little like smudgy and not that perfect. And that's to do with the fact that I'm filming this at the end of a work day. So I just got home from work. Today is like the longest day of the year, so I was like, there's going to be plenty of daylight for me to be filming today. So I gave my makeup a quick little touch up, but most of this has been on for nearly 10 hours. So it's getting to that point where I would very much like to take everything off, but I was like, I'm gonna soldier on and film this video for you guys. So today's video, like I mentioned, has 8 palettes, 4 more affordable ones, and 4 more expensive ones, you could say. So let's start with the affordable stuff first. I'm not ranking these, I'm not really putting these in any order. I'm just sort of going to be talking about these palettes as is and include some swatches and perhaps also some looks if I haven't done any reviews yet, because I think there's only one palette here that I've really done a full review for. So I'll make sure to insert those kind of things as we go along. So the first palette I want to chat about is the LA Girl Keep It Playful Downplay palette. Now this palette I wanted to try because this was very much announced as being an alternative slash dupe to the Huda Beauty Smoky Obsessions palettes. And it's the only Obsessions palette from Huda Beauty. That is still kind of on my wish list, but it seems to be sometimes coming back into stock, but then it also kind of isn't. So it's one that's really hard to find by now, and I never got around to trying it. So when this was released and it was super affordable, I was super duper interested in trying this. So I finally got around to doing just that. And I knew that I quite liked the LA Girl formula because I already tried their Hot Heat palette, I think it was called. I ended up only decluttering it because the color story wasn't really up my alley. But the quality of it was really nice. So I was hoping that these little palettes that they came out with at the end of 2020, that these were just as good. And I have to say that quality-wise, I definitely really like this palette. The mattes are quite blendable. The shimmers you get in here are really nice, but these two that make the palette more interesting are a little bit flaky, I have to say. So these two you do sort of need to be very careful with because they can lead to fallout quite quickly if you're not very careful. So I like to apply these with my finger just to make sure I minimize the amount of fallout for sure. And another thing that I feel makes this palette a little bit more, well, less exciting is the fact that the top row, did we really need that? I think this could have been a 6-pan, to be quite honest. Like for me, these 3 shades just kind of don't have any purpose. These 2 blendy shades are almost identical. Like on me, they look exactly the same. And then we just get a creamy blendy shade, which I think I have a million times over in my makeup collection. So I definitely don't need that. I could have done with just one of these and then maybe not the black. I'm not a huge fan of blacks, we all know that. But yeah, this palette is lovely quality, it's super affordable. I think that if you missed out on the Huda Beauty palette, or if you don't want to splurge on one of the palettes I will be mentioning a little bit later on, that this is a really good drugstore alternative to like a smoky eye palette that can do a little bit more than just a smoky eye. Because I think that if you, for instance, just stick to these 2 shades, you can create yourself a very easy, cool toned, neutral look for sure. You don't have to go smoky with this if you don't want to. What I do have to say though, that I have a very fair skin tone, as you might be able to tell. I'm a MAC NC15 roughly, and I have a cool to neutral undertone, and I felt that this was quite deep on me. So on me, because of my skin tone and the way my coloring just works, and then how these shadows play together, I felt it was quite a stark contrast, so that has to be something that you have to bear in mind. I think this is a really lovely palette if you have a more like medium skin tone and up, especially because these two shades already make it quite deep, and this also has a bit more warmth to it. So I think this is definitely a cool tone palette for people who may not go for cool tones that quickly, because it's not super icy or gray toned, which I think is appealing to a lot of people, because if you are a warm toned lover but you're trying to get into cool tones, then definitely check this one out. But the brand that is going to be featured most heavily in the affordable category is Colourpop, because Colourpop came out with quite a couple of cooler toned palettes towards the end of 2020. Now, I'm not featuring the Going Coconuts in this palette, because to me, even though a lot of people were saying it was a cool tone palette, I believe it's more like smack in the middle neutral. So for me, it's not too warm leaning, it's not too cool leaning. For me, the Going Coconuts is definitely like right smack in the middle of just like a good neutral palette, which is why I'm not featuring it in today's video, because I feel that the That's Taupe that came out a little bit later is far more cool toned. If you don't know anything about me, I just recently reorganized a lot of my Colourpop 9-pan palettes because I felt that they were just not that perfect for me personally. But one that I didn't mess with is the That's Taupe, because the That's Taupe ended up being one of my favorite monochromatic palettes from Colourpop that I've tried for a number of reasons. Reason number one, the color story. It's cool toned, but not that cool toned where you're like, ooh, it's really like weird looking on me or anything like that. It has really good cool tones, but also again, without it being too gray. I think that a lot of brands think cool tones should be gray. That's not true. A cool tone can also be a brown. You get a lovely cool tone brown in this. And also here, this one, they're stunning. And then the shimmers in this are lovely too. And another thing that I really appreciate, and why I didn't want to mess with this color story, is that I can take this palette into so many different directions and it will just work. So that's why this one was one I didn't reorganize, I didn't mess with it, because this has my cool toned lover's heart beating just a little bit faster, that's for sure. So with the That's Taupe, I really think that Colourpop gave me something that I was definitely still looking for at a drugstore price point. Now granted, I have to say, Colourpop, if you are in the EU or the UK or anywhere that isn't the US, Colourpop can be really pricey to buy, so I always recommend buying them when they do a 30% off sale or if they're offering free shipping. That's the only time I buy Colourpop, and then what I like to do is that I sort of save up a wish list of all the different things I want to try and make sure I get a good amount, and then all together it kind of levels out all across the board, you know what I mean? And with Colourpop, of course, the quality can be a little inconsistent. However, I felt that this palette had really lovely quality, I have to say, and I really appreciate this shade here. It's like a taupe with a greenish undertone to it, like not quite olive, but olive leaning, and it's so stunning, so stunning. And now we get to palettes 3 and 4. This is where the 7.5 comes in, because if you saw my recent single shadow reorganization video, then you know that I pulled my Stone Cold Fox a little bit apart. So this is now spread over 2 palettes, but actually it's only 1. So really we're talking about 7 palettes in today's video, but I kind of reorganized it. So the Stone Cold Fox, in case you don't know what it looks like this. Never mind the gaps, because those shades live in here. because I took out the shades that I felt worked best for me, and there were only 9 shades in this entire palette that ended up working for me. The other shades, as you can see, these 2 rows, and also these 2 rows, I wasn't a huge fan. And that's definitely why I decided to pull apart the Stone Cold Fox. I know that a lot of people are sort of umming and ahhing between the Stone Cold Fox and the That's Taupe. My recommendation would be, if you like cool tones and you don't want to faff around with 900 different shades that all look identical on you, then just get the That's Taupe. A, it's cheaper. 2, it's only 9 pans. And 3, it's just a lot more manageable. So if you don't want to stress yourself out, go for that one. I also prefer the shimmers in that palette a lot over the ones that you get in here. I put 5 shimmers in here, and then we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 shimmers left in a palette that is what, 30? So in total, you really don't get a lot of shimmers. You get quite a few like sequin kind of shades in here. Luckily, no pressed glitters, but I just felt that this palette suffered from what I feel many larger palettes suffer from, and that's too much repetition. Now, one of the reasons why you see 2 like complete rows that I haven't pulled anything from is because these are warm tones. Like, what are warm tones doing in a cool tone palette? Again, if you are someone who likes to mix a little bit of warms and neutrals and cool tones and all that because it matches your coloring a little bit better, then I think this palette can be nice. But if you're like me and you're really looking for just purely cool tones, go with the That's Taupe. You don't need both. You really don't. One thing I do appreciate in this is that it does go quite light. So again, if you're quite fair, it works quite well. However, and here we go again with my gripe about palettes putting in like brands putting grays in cool tone palettes. It's got quite a lot of grays in the middle 2 rows that I ended up ultimately not pulling for. Like this entire row of grays is still intact. I also felt that this shade here was quite lackluster. It just really didn't do it for me. It didn't tickle that itch of a good shimmer for me. It's got a silver, which is nice, but I have better silvers in my collection for sure, even from Colourpop. So I didn't want to pull for that silver as well. And that's why I ended up taking most of the shades out of this side of the palette, because this is a row of like cool tone mauves, and this is a row of cool tone browns. So that's why I really veered towards this side of the palette and the few taupes it had, but the other shades in this palette just really aren't for me. However, I kept the palette around so I could feature it in today's video, and I still need to round it up in my Shop My Stash, but then this is gonna be decluttered because A, I don't need the palette this big. 2, it's got way too many shades that I don't like. And 3, I've put the shades I do like in another palette. So let me just show you that then. So this is the Blush Crush packaging because I didn't love the Blush Crush. There was only 1 shade in here that I liked. So when I reorganized all of my Colourpop palettes, I definitely took all of these shades out and I kept the packaging around, thinking if I ever then want to reorganize my Colourpop palettes again, I will always have this on hand. And now I can just keep the 9 shades from the Stone Cold Fox that I love best and keep those in. So I'm not sure anymore what these colors are called in the Stone Cold Fox. You're gonna have to watch that other video because I pulled these and I have no clue what they are. But like I mentioned, I ended up putting 5 shimmers in and 4 mattes. I did take out the cool tone brown it had because I thought that was an excellent shade. And then like a taupey shade and some of the lighter browns. So I promised in my single shadow reorganization video where I pulled apart the Stone Cold Fox that I would swatch these shades for you in today's video. So that's what we're going to be doing. So that's what those 9 shades look like. So I'll make sure to zoom you in so you can see a bit better. So there you have it. Those are the 9 shades that I pulled from the Stone Cold Fox. So I started here. So this is the top row. This is the middle row with those shimmers, and then this is the bottom row with the mattes. And I can tell you which shades I pulled, of course, but I don't know which shade in the Blush Crush. is this shade. But I can tell you that the shades I took out are Sediment to Be, Bold Type, I Dig It, Mystery, Ghost Town, Nice Guy, Baby Doll, and Fascinated. Oh, and Drama Mama. Those are the ones that I pulled for. So now that we've sort of pulled these, that you can see that this is perhaps a little bit more mauve-y gray, and this is a bit more brown toned, I'd say. So the bottom one is That's Taupe, and the shades I pulled from the Stone Cold Fox are more like mauve-y grayish toned, and this is a bit more, it almost looks like a warm tone palette compared to this now that I put it together. Could be the pink and the cream background, I'm not sure. But yeah, then you also get a bit of a comparison of what these shades look like. I think they can be nicely complementary palettes now. Do I regret buying the Stone Cold Fox? By no means. But yeah, this is much more manageable for me. It just is. And I will be using the Stone Cold Fox from now on like this. Alright, so now we're moving on to the more higher end palettes that I have for you. So I've got four more for you left. 2 of them are a bit more indie leaning, and the other 2 are definitely high-end luxury palettes. Can you guess which ones we're going to be talking about? Leave a comment down below. But I really wanted to still try Lunar Beauty. It was a brand I haven't tried before. And then they released the Eternal Eclipse palette at the end of 2020. I think this is still available if you're trying to get it. I bought it upon release, but didn't play around with it until fairly recently, because once I got this home and I opened it up, this palette made me so incredibly nervous, because when I got it home, I was like, it looks very warm toned, especially this middle row with the transitions. I was like, I hope I'm gonna find it worth it in the end. I hope it's not one of those ABH sultry moments where everybody says it's cool toned, but on my cool to neutral undertone, it looks warm. You know that situation? If you have a cool undertone, you know what I'm talking about, because that palette, the sultry, it only has warm transitions and like 3 cool tones in the entire palette. Anyways, let's not go on to that tangent, but this palette just made me really nervous. And once I then swatched it, and some of the shimmers in the top row ended up feeling really thin and just not great, I was like, oh no. So I went into this palette thinking the worst, thinking the worst. And then I ended up playing around with, I used every single shade in this palette. That goes for any palette you're seeing in this video today. I don't review palettes unless I've tried every single shade, just in case you're wondering. And I ended up figuring out that really the only warm tones you get are these 3. Well, maybe these 4. Like, these 4 are more warm toned leaning, but they actually complement the other shades quite well. I ended up being able to pull a stunning, like, more warm toned leaning look out of it. I mean, I don't love golds, but this gold is a gold with a greenish, like, olivey undertone, like this antique-y gold kind of shade. And those are the kind of golds I do like. So I ended up liking this so much more than I had expected before trying it. And I ended up doing a navy smoky eye with some of these navies at the bottom. And so many of you commented on the video I filmed wearing that look, saying, your eyeshadow is looking great today. I feel ya, I was really loving that look too. And where some of these like top shimmers felt really thin and like almost like nothing when I finger swatched them, with a brush, and especially when you foil them, they look stunning on the eye. Like this taupey shimmer, oh my word. Is this my favorite neutral cool tone palette? It's tough, it's tough. I have another pick today where I feel that's a much stronger contender, but I love how this is a neutral palette, but you also get a pop of something. And on my brown eyes, navies just make for the best smoky eyes. Like, I love that LA Girl palette, don't get me wrong, but I would use this entire bottom row for making smoky eyes 1,000,000 times over that LA Girl Downplay palette. So this is just a really versatile cool tone palette, and I really like the fact that Lunar Beauty just took into account that a cool tone palette also needs versatility. Because if there's one thing I dislike, it's cool tone palettes that don't, like if they're a one-trick pony, like the LA Girl palette. I feel that this palette can take you from day to night, from the office to the party. Like it just has everything, but it still stays cool toned, and you have the option to bring in a bit more warmth if it suits your coloring, or if you just want to go for a bronze, you can, but you don't have to. And I felt that the undertones of even the more warm toned leaning shades pulled more cool toned once I put it together with the cool tones in the palette. So if you put the warm tones together, it looks warm, but if you put, for instance, this bronze together with the taupe in the middle, it starts looking more cool toned. I don't know how they did it, but this palette is very close to being brilliant. And my second indie pick that I wanted to share with you is a very recent release. It's the Mary Jane palette from Melt Cosmetics. Now, Melt and me, we've been having a bit of history because Melt Cosmetics, I've tried some of their stacks from even before they did palettes. I have their Gemini palette, which I love. I love their Smoke Sessions, the Myrte. Oh, I wish they would bring that one back. That's one of my all-time favorite palettes for sure. And I also have the Millennial Pinks, which is going to make an appearance in my next 10 palette review video, because I have tried that by now as well. But the Mary Jane was released last April, and people were already tagging me in this like, Melt is doing a cool tone palette, you need this. I got it straight away, and I knew that I had to make sure I played with this. Now, this palette suffers from exactly the same thing that I felt the Lunar Beauty suffered from, which is once I got it home, it didn't look very cool toned to me. Like in the pan, it just looks really warm toned. It just, I don't know why, but this looks very, very warm toned. We get some like greenish undertones here, and this looks a little bit more bronzy brown. So to me, like to the eye, it really only looks like you get like what, 3 cool tones? So I was again pretty nervous about this one until I put it on my face. I did 2 or 3 looks with this so far. I think I did a look more like aimed at like using these shades and then using more of those greeny shades. And I ended up really, really liking this. Like in the end, the way the looks came together, yes, it's smoke inspired, so it is quite deep and quite smoky and sultry, so it has to be your cup of tea. However, I felt that this transition was light enough to make it work on my fair skin, so it's got enough versatility for me to not have it go too dark. And something that a lot of people didn't like is that these shades on the end are a bit of a weird thin formula, where again in a finger swatch it doesn't really show up. And I also definitely had trouble to get them to really like look like this when applied with a brush to my lids. I've only been using them really as inner corner highlights, but where these shades come in and why I feel you can still make this work if you are as fair as me, you can use them as toppers. So for instance, these shades right here are all quite deep, but then you put this or this over it and you kind of tone down the depth of the shade. And because these both have a sheer base, you can sort of transform these shades to either do something with a bit more of like a halo in the middle. You just kind of like do it a little dab in the middle of your eye. You have that little instant oomph. Or what you can also do is really just what I actually did in the second look I did. So I put this shimmer all over the lid and put this all over it, and it really made that darker greenish taupey shade just come to life and work a lot better with my coloring. So that is something I really appreciate. This is the Melt formula that I know and love. Yes, the shimmers that Melt does are very thick and can be difficult to work with, Their matte formula is definitely where it's at. I don't regret buying this at all. Like, this is a stunning, stunning palette, and I can't wait to go back to this because it's a lovely palette. These three like greeny shades, I think that if I pair those with the greens in the Gemini, I've said this many times before about Melt palettes, but I feel that the way they create their palettes is if you put all of their palettes together, like if you have a few of them, they can really sort of like really go together really well. So you could build an eyeshadow palette collection with just Melt and you could do everything. But that's just the way I feel. But yeah, the Mary Jane, I know it got a lot of flack. It really, really, really got a lot of flack for not being perfect. And those two shades on the end, yes, they're very thin, but they're meant to be transformer shades. And that's exactly what I needed a palette like this, because else it would just be way too deep for me and I would not be able to get away with it because it will just look like I was punched in the face. But because of those shades, I can make it work. And now we're on to the final two palettes of this video. I told you we would get luxury. I tried the Divine Rose 2 palette, I think mid-2020, and then they had a sale on and I was like, I'm gonna snatch up the Subliminal one. So this is the Pat McGrath Labs Mothership 1 Subliminal Eyeshadow Palette. And I keep these in their boxes because I really like this artwork. Like, the Subliminal probably has like the best outer box to me. Like, I just think this is so stunning. And this is just, you know, every single time you open it up, it feels like a present. Now, something you do have to know, like the palettes themselves are super heavy. You get a card with all of the shade names when you buy these. It's not that user-friendly if you keep it all together. You could, of course, just keep the palette. You could do that. But yeah, with a discount, I feel that these are worth it. Do I feel that the 130 euros that these now go for on the Pat McGrath website, that's worth the price point? I would say no. Like, I think I got this with a 25 or 30% off coupon, like sale thing. Then it comes to just under 100 euros, including shipping and handling fees, like everything included from the Pat McGrath website. And then I think it's worth it. But yeah, these are stunning eyeshadows. And I'm so happy that my second full-size eyeshadow palette from Pat McGrath is the Subliminal, because these are my shades. Now, she insists on putting yellow tone golds in every single palette she does. It's infuriating if, like me, you have that cool to neutral undertone and yellow tone golds just make you look like where some people say that cool tones can look really ashy and dead on them, I feel that way about yellow tone golds. I put a yellow tone gold on my eyes and it just looks like I've got an illness, like something has gone wrong with my lids. That's how I feel. However, because all of these shades are cool tones, in this palette, the yellow tone gold that you get has a different quality to it that still makes it work. Is it my favorite shade in the palette? No. It's never going to be my favorite shade in the palette, but I feel it goes. I feel it goes. These two shades, those are lovely. These are both like flippy, duochromy, multichromy leaning sort of shades that really transform any look. The blue, oh my word, this blue is life. And one of the reasons why I wanted to try this palette is because I wanted to try her matte formula, because I had only tried one of the quads and I feel that she doesn't do a lot of mattes, which I find it so strange because so many people always call for so many mattes and still people go gaga for her palettes. So I don't really get it, but this has 3 mattes. This black isn't really like a black, it's more like a very deep charcoal shade, I would say. And then you get these 2 stunning shimmers. Again, I hadn't tried her actual shimmer formula when I bought this palette yet. But by now I have, because I have tried other palettes from her by now. But these two shimmers are lovely. This taupey shade and then this like dirty lilac. I'm having a thing for dirty lilacs, people, I just do. And then the way everything combines, this palette is a winner, I can tell you that. This, however, is the McGrath palette that I hear nobody talking about though. Everybody's always going on about the Bronze Seduction, which I believe is the Mothership 5. But I think that if you are fair toned, like a fair skin tone, you want some really good neutrals to just make a neutral look, like this in the crease and then one of these two shimmers on the lid, that's your everyday look. And then this in the inner corner. And then if you want to amp it up, you put the blue on the lower lash line. So I feel that this, yummy color story. It has some versatility. It's not boring. The mattes are super duper blendable. You get 4 of her special shades in here, which alone I could buy this palette for. Like, if we didn't get these 6 shades and we only got those 4, I would still buy this palette. Maybe not at this price point though. But her quads go for like what, 60, 65? So I would definitely pay that. So yeah, this is a stunning palette. And then finally, in today's video, I wanted to mention a palette that I have already featured in other videos before. However, I only do these cool tone neutral roundups like once a year. And this palette I didn't own yet in my previous one, so I needed to give it a shout out. But the Natasha Denona Glam palette. You can win this palette in my giveaway that I'm currently running on my channel. So make sure to link the video where you can enter the giveaway in the description box down below. There are 2 prizes you can choose from, and this is one of the prizes that I'm giving away to celebrate 5K. The reason why I'm giving away this palette is because ever since I tried this at the end of 2020, it has climbed the ranks of like favorite eyeshadow palettes so incredibly quickly. Like, I have, like, very often with like palettes, like they need to grow on me. Like, me and my palettes, we need to usually form a relationship before I really know how I feel about them. Not this guy. We became best friends like straight away. Like, we hit it off. Like, first brush swatch application, it was like love at first eye look. That was what was going on with this. I have done a look with this in a video a few months ago where I put it up against the Urban Decay Naked 2, which has been discontinued, which you can no longer buy. If you want to buy it, you can get like older, like some palettes still on eBay. But I feel that even though this is a Natasha Denona palette, and I know a lot of people think like, ooh, Natasha Denona, that's like Pat McGrath pricing. But since this is in her medium-sized format, these aren't as expensive, and therefore I feel it's quite comparable to Urban Decay's Naked 2, because the Naked 2 over here anyways was like 55 euros. That's how much Naked palettes go for, and this is like 65. So there's really only like a 10 euro difference. So if you ever missed out on the Urban Decay Naked 2 and you were still hoping to get something like it, get this one, because I feel they're very similar. And the Urban Decay Naked 2 is in my top 3 favorite all-time palettes. And I have been saying that this may replace that at some point, but that's where we need to establish that relationship a little bit more firmly before I can go that far. Because me and my Urban Decay Naked 2, we've been through things. You know, we've been through life. We understand each other. This palette, we are still at that like getting to know each other stage. But it has everything that I need in a cool tone neutral palette that is strictly cool toned. Like, I love the Lunar Beauty and the Pat McGrath too, because of the blues and the fact that I can do like a navy smoky eye with it like that. I love them for that. I love my Melt palette as well, but that's a little bit more limiting, where you go either more taupey brown or green toned, whereas this is just full on neutral. Neutral every day. If you work in an office, you can't wear blue eyeshadow like I'm wearing today. I went to work wearing exactly this look, people, so shoot me. Yeah, I just kind of do it. I don't really care. So yeah, but if you are someone who can't wear a lot of makeup to work, or if it's just not really in your comfort zone to be wearing blues or greeny tones or whatever, you just want to keep it nice and neutral and basic and easy, I'm telling you, this one. Also for those fair tone people out there, like if you have a fair skin tone, I can't say it and stress it enough that this has enough light tones to make it work. It also has some depth. So where, for instance, the Melt palette can be really, really deep, which is lovely if you have like medium olive skin tones and up, but then on someone like me, it can just look like I was punched in the face. With this, it never happens. It just never ever does. This palette has everything I need to create that perfect cool tone neutral look that can take me again from day to night, but it also has a little bit of warmth. Again, over here in the corner, it has a little bit of warmth, so again, I feel it can cater to a lot of people, a lot of different things that you might like. Just saying. But yeah, for me, this is even more perfect than the Lunar Beauty. Like the Lunar Beauty is very close, but this, the formula is on point. What I like is more shimmers than mattes, so that's why another reason why I like this one better than the Lunar Beauty one, because that's got quite a few mattes, but this one, we get 5 mattes and everything else has a shimmer. I'm down, I'm down. We get a rose gold, which is what I love. It's got bright shades, but nothing is too stark. Natasha Denona understands cool tones, and this is such a yummy palette, which is why I wanted to give it another mention in this video today. I will link you to the review that I did already in the description box down below. And yeah, check out my giveaway in case you haven't yet. So I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video. It was quite a long one, but I had lots of thoughts about these palettes, so I hope you don't mind. And I hope to be as complete and helpful as possible when I film these videos, so that hopefully you can make a good, decision when you decide what cool tone palette to buy next. So that's hopefully how this went down for you. I really hoped you enjoyed watching it. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week. So stay tuned if you'd like to see more from me. I definitely talk about eyeshadow palettes regularly on this channel. So I hope you'd like to stay tuned and come back for more. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye everyone.